A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens was written and published in 1843. The moral message of the novel is to spread kindness and raise awareness for the working class. Dickens published A Christmas Carol at a time where his last novel wasn't such a success, so he needed to deliver a strong message to the audiences. Dickens discusses the conditions of the poor and the upper class. He uses the character of Scrooge, the main character in our novel, to discuss ideas of how the upper class could do more to support the working class. He also uses Scrooge to critique the upper class. Dickens shows how the working class would send their children to workhouses and they weren't very well off, so they couldn't afford to do much. However, at a time like Christmas, he shows how people should come together and celebrate regardless of their class. The novel opens on Christmas Eve, where Scrooge is busy at work with his clerk, Bob Cratchit. Even on Christmas Eve, Scrooge refuses to give him the day off. Scrooge also refuses to go to his nephew, Fred's Christmas gathering, and instead chooses to work. When Scrooge gets home, he is encountered by his old business partner, Marley's ghost. Marley's ghost informs Scrooge that he will be visited by 3 other ghosts later on in the night. The first ghost to visit is the ghost of Christmas past. This ghost shows Scrooge how he behaved in his past. It takes him back to his childhood and his failed engagement to his ex-girlfriend. Scrooge starts to become reflective of how he may have behaved and how he's starting to see a change. The next ghost is the ghost of Christmas present, and this ghost shows Scrooge how ill Tiny Tim is, and Scrooge is saddened by Tiny Tim's illness and starts to reflect on how he could possibly help. And finally, we see the ghost of Christmas yet to come. This ghost takes Scrooge to a vision of his future and his tombstone where he is dead. Scrooge realises that he does not want to die a lonely death, and it is because of this he vows to change. On Christmas Day, Scrooge buys a turkey for the Cratchit family as a gesture of goodwill, but he also decides to attend his nephew Fred's Christmas gathering. And from this point on, Scrooge vows that he will be a generous and compassionate person for the rest of his life. Our first character, Scrooge, is the main character in Dickens' novel. Scrooge is described as miserable, bitter, and selfish. He doesn't do anything to help anyone else, and we can see this when the gentlemen come to his house to ask for a donation for charity. Scrooge refuses this and instead decides to keep his money for himself. At the beginning of the novel, Dickens presents Scrooge as a symbol for the government, as he is also reluctant to help anyone but himself, similar to what the Victorian government were like, refusing to help anyone of the working class. However, as the novel develops, Scrooge is representative of a change. This change we see through the ghosts of the Christmas past, present, and yet to come, showing Scrooge what kind of life he will live if he doesn't make a change. We see Scrooge develop as a character, and at the end, he redeems himself by celebrating Christmas with the Cratchit family. Our next character is Bob Cratchit. Bob Cratchit is an employee that works for Scrooge. He is shown to be a hard-working and caring person. We see him be hard-working through actually the conditions that he works under. Dickens shows this by replicating what actually the Victorian people would be working under, and Cratchit is a representative of the society and most people within that society. Cratchit is also shown as caring as he looks after his son, Tiny Tim. As I've discussed before, Tiny Tim is unwell, and it is through his illness that Scrooge sees that there is hope, even in the worst of times. Cratchit is shown to be really caring and hardworking, and he thanks Scrooge for the job that he is given, even if at times it can be really difficult. We see this on Christmas Day when Cratchit toasts to Scrooge, his employer. It is through Cratchit's hardworking and positive attitude that Scrooge learns and we see his redemption. Another character is Tiny Tim. Tiny Tim is a young, innocent boy who is unfortunately a victim of the Victorian era. Tiny Tim is extremely unwell, and the causes of this could be the workhouses and the working conditions for the lower class. His family don't have enough money and therefore can't afford his treatment. This symbolises to Scrooge the changes that need to be made and how he can implement these changes. We also see the ghost of Christmas past. This ghost like all the others, has a distinct personality. It's quite calm, caring, and sympathetic towards Scrooge's past. The ghost takes Scrooge back into the past, where we are shown his childhood and how he broke up with his ex-girlfriend and how she's now living a lovely life. This makes the readers feel sympathetic towards Scrooge and some of the things that he has gone through. We then see the Ghost of Christmas Present. Now, this ghost is quite jolly and cheerful and shows Scrooge how people, and 90% of the population, spend Christmas with their loved ones celebrating. Scrooge sees this and he sees that he wants to be a part of that. The Ghost of Christmas Present also shows Scrooge a cloak with 2 children under it. These children are a metaphor for ignorance and want, 2 things that Scrooge must overcome in order to change his life. We then see the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come. This ghost is quite sinister, and the ghost does not talk to Scrooge, except shows Scrooge the life that he is about to live if he doesn't make changes. The ghost takes Scrooge to a funeral, and Scrooge is unaware that this is his funeral. Scrooge overhears people talking really negatively about this man who has passed away, and instead just talking about the money he has left behind. Scrooge realises that on the tombstone it says his name, and that this is the life he will leave behind, and this is what he will be remembered for if he doesn't make a change. Scrooge also realises through this ghost that Tiny Tim has passed away, and Scrooge feels immense guilt for Tiny Tim's death and realises that he must make a change in order to help. A theme that Dickens strongly represents through his novel is the theme of family and home. We see this through the Ghost of Christmas Past, where the ghost takes Scrooge to his past and he realises what he's missing out on. Scrooge sees his ex-girlfriend with a new husband and children and realises that that could have been him if he had changed. We also see Dickens represent the idea of family and home through the Cratchit family, who, despite with having very little, have a lot of love amongst them. Dickens represents the idea of family as something that should be a unit, and Scrooge realises at the end of the novel it's not enough for him to just be a good man, but actually he yearns for a family as well. Another theme that is prominent in the novel is the theme of forgiveness. We see Scrooge going from a character that is dismissed by everyone to a character that we learn to love. Scrooge, at the beginning of the novel, refuses to give any charitable donations to the gentlemen that come to his house. However, towards the end of the novel, we see Scrooge make a large donation in order to help those who are less fortunate than him. We also see Scrooge being forgiving and being forgiven by the readers when he wishes everyone a Merry Christmas, something that Scrooge refused to do throughout the novel. A final theme that we see present in A Christmas Carol is the theme of social injustice. Dickens was saddened by the social injustice in the Victorian era, where the rich were enjoying feasts with their family and the poor were sent to work. Dickens presents this in the novel, where Scrooge refuses to give money and refuses to help those who are not of the same class. We see Scrooge's redemption towards the end of the novel, where he decides to donate money and restore some order within the readers. As the readers, we feel that there is faith through Scrooge's compassion. The novel is told in third-person perspective, and this is reflective of the ghost stories that people tell at Christmas time. The novel is also split up into separate staves, and these are reflective of the carols that would be sung at Christmas time. Similar to the carols, the staves all have a moral message that are delivered at the end, with the first one showing and setting the scene about the character of Scrooge, the second showing how he develops as a character, and finally the redemption that we see as readers in Scrooge. This redemption allows us to feel compassionate towards Scrooge and see that there is hope for change.